That's the Oscar moment. They put the music to stop you on. I get the point. I get the point.
Or you setting up the stream? It's completely fine.
Hey, no problem.
You go back to the extended desktop. I will change the slide. Sorry about that. I should have done that before. Okay. Thank you so much. Okay. Okay, I think by this, what the question means is like where it just says specific field X. I think that means like the specific team and the type of job you're doing. Um, so, but that could also be filled in by anything like the audience says. So, for example, like I guess people are really into going into machine learning, for example, at the moment, or just if someone is into web dev is really big. So, if someone were to want to go into that specific field within the tech industry, um, from like a basic soft dev career or something, how do you think they can, what do you think they can do to segue into that field, into like more specific niche fields or niche teams? One second. I don't know why that happened. Did it turn off? Did it break? Battery. But these are some of these, they're all used in like random order. We went to 3 bars and then down to 0 immediately. We could, but if you guys want to start doing that, I'll fix this up. I'm so sorry. I blame the university for this. I'm sorry. Nope, they're all dead, Jackson. Here. You know, another podium. It's supposed to be like 2 things. These work? Yes. Okay. 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 I'm so sorry.
We are back. So, hey, if you want to do, I will probably go back to my first advice of networking. If you want to go into, an example, machine learning, I would suggest that find a couple of meetups around machine learning, join those meetups, see what the teams and the people they are doing, meet people and see what you have. In example, we are right now, one of the focus that we have in my team is to help startups to use AI. We can connect those startups, get feedback from them, connect with Microsoft, with OpenAI, try to see how we can all collaborate together. And I started to meet people there. And I started to meet people who also wants to be there. And it's amazing. They basically meet each other. There is one big in Toronto that every week they post, they speak literally 5 minutes about job opportunities and what you do, what you can do next. And they also have mentorship, anything. Sorry for repeating myself, but networking, focus networking will help you probably get there.
I definitely agree with what Bruno mentioned. Definitely networking is one of the most powerful tools you can definitely have, especially with others, given that, university only teaches you so much. So definitely working with someone that has been in the field for like 5, 10 years definitely is a great way to kind of slowly get into that field and to kind of explore just to see what might pique your interest. But with that being said, one other important thing is, at least for example, I know for web development or even for just like backend development, for example, there are a lot of resources online that provide a full roadmap of kind of how to get started, whether that be starting with the basics of like HTML, for example, and then making your way over to, I don't know, like React.js or Vue and so on. So at least like definitely those roadmaps are made and also updated from developers that have X number of years of experience. And from there, definitely, I feel like that's a great way to kind of get started.
So I guess I can say like what my field is. So I work in Google Ads. So the specific field would be ad tech. And I think that a asset that I had going into that was that I did a double major in business and computer science. So that's basically what ad tech is. You're like learning about the marketing side, but you're also learning about the tech side. And if you want to get involved with ad tech, it is a very profitable business. Like Google Ads makes 70% of Google's revenue. So what you can do to segue into it, I do think Google's recruiting pipeline is still pretty general. Like it's only after you get a position that you can choose your team, and it's probably the same at many other companies. So if you want to get a position at Google in general, one tip is that Google is usually a lot of hackathons. And if you go to those hackathons and you talk to the Google recruiters, usually they have maybe some like links that you can apply through that will indicate to the recruiter that you met them at the hackathon, or you can directly talk to them about your profile. Maybe you can get a referral. So those are ways that you can get a position at Google in general. And then once you're at the company, if you want to segue to ad tech, showing more of an interest in the business side of things, how revenue is generated, what the value for the end customer is actually going to be, is probably how you do that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, the next question. Okay, I guess this is more so like for Navy and Chris, probably if you've thought about it. But have you ever wondered about like changing your career or how you would transition out of it? And I know like a really popular stream is people usually maybe transition out of the tech industry into like venture capital. But if you were to ever consider doing something like that, how do you think is the best opportunity for that?
For sure. So I think it's normal to have more than one thing that you're interested in. It's okay to have lots of passions. And especially if you're in tech, having lots of passions is an asset because it means you can combine those passions. And there's definitely going to be an industry out there for you. For me, for example, I'm really interested, other than business, I'm also interested in space. And I remember being an undergrad and thinking, well, I am interested in astronomy and I'm also interested in tech. So maybe down the line, I can go into space tech. But that's, after I want to first develop more leadership experience. I want to develop more tech experience. I want to become a better engineer because when you're working on like a NASA mission, you can't really afford to make mistakes. So I decided that while I would be doing my career in software, I would also be pursuing education. So right now I'm taking some courses. After you graduate, U of T actually gives you some credits to take continuing studies courses. So I used those credits. And I also did some courses at the local college, considering doing my MBA next year. So I'm thinking that you don't have to just stick with one career. You can still do multiple things at the same time. You can plan long term, you can transition. It's okay. You don't really have to be too stressed that you're stuck on one path. That's the advice I give.
For me, at least like as of right now, I never really wondered about changing my career. At least the work that I do is very broad in a sense where it touches upon so many different things that, in a sense, it's like for example, it's not just specifically just working on like front end or back end. I pretty much touch across many other things, so incorporate stuff such as like DevOps and so on. So at least from there, it's a bit special in my case. But at least I know for changing career, one thing that I did want to kind of incorporate more more things on the business side of things, just because whether it be I don't know, like any other, or at least for a lot of the work that I do, it's more so how does X translate into however many millions of dollars into whatever the business is. So at least like from there, that's where rather than completely changing your career, what you could do is that you can, I guess similar to the last question, you can slowly segue yourself into it in a sense where maybe there's a project that will help with like a multi-million-dollar save with the company. So at least from there, pretty much like speak to your manager, try to get, or if it piques your interest, speak to your manager, speak up about it to try to get yourself segued into that. And I suppose from there, that's where eventually, once you do kind of get more info, whether it be like business or some other related field, that you can kind of change within the company. And you never know, at least from there, at least that's how you can kind of gain experience. And from there, at the same time, you also do have other industry professionals in those specific fields kind of help you guide you along the way.
Yes, and also, how big is the change that you want to do? Do you want to stop programming and go and work in a farm, or maybe open a coffee shop? Or hey, changing careers is something that everybody's thinking. I mean, literally, as I mentioned before, I worked 16 years, 17. I don't know. in the previous company, but there I did 5 or 6 different roles. Started a programmer, then moved to a software architect, then lead innovation in Europe, and then here in Canada for years. Now I lead the global team, still doing programming, and I have a lot of interest. I like to do new things all the time, and sometimes you plan for these changes. Sometimes it's just an opportunity that is open there, and you need to say yes or no. But the change of your careers, if you're working in tech, that's something that probably is going to happen. Maybe in a big company, you will change career inside the company. You will do software engineering 1 year, and then next year you're going to be, like myself, an advocate, speaking with students and companies and trying to learn more about how the clients use your products. And then 2 years later, you go back to software engineering. Some people plan for this. I never plan for this. I always have the life saying, hey, Bruno, this is for you. Paf, okay, here we are, move forward. But also think about that you're probably not going to do the same several years in a row. If you plan for this, that's great, but also be open for new opportunities. That's amazing. Our field is super, super amazing. I mean, I love it.
Okay, thank you. Okay. The next one, okay, it's just a Q&A with with everyone here. But if there's not enough questions and we still have time, I have more questions as well, so we can also do that. So does anyone have any questions for the panel, specific guests you want to ask questions? Anything, feel free to just raise your hand and I'll select from among you. Okay.
If you want, we can also do hablo español. So I can speak in Spanish. That's for fun.
Yeah, that's fun. Yep.
You want to take it?
Her question is related to like what fields are the most advantageous for someone, like what majors are the most advantageous for someone looking to get into tech other than CS? Anyone on the panel specifically?
I can share my experience about your process.
Right. So I did a double major in CS and management, and I found that to be an amazing combination. I think that they kind of like supplement each other's weaknesses, where if you're working in CS, sometimes you tend to lose track of like the bigger picture on the business side. So doing a management major definitely helped me learn that side. And like when I was doing interviews, the interviewers loved that I was able to talk about the big picture, the end impact, kind of speak their language. And at the same time, it is helpful that, for example, when I'm working on a project, I'm talking with my manager, or when I'm talking with like, senior developers, I can talk about the tech side too. So management and CS are a great combination, and I don't think enough people do this combination, but it's very, very worth it. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess also to add on to that, at least definitely one common one, at least related to CS, would definitely be like math or stats. But with that being said, I think one that's not really talked often about, or if at all, is actually if you minor in English or something, just because from my experience, at least just working for, I think, a year and 4 or 5 months now, at least it's pretty much communication is the biggest thing for sure. And at least for me, I end up writing tons of documents, whether they be design documents, proposals for X, Y, and Z and stuff like that. And at least I definitely know that companies have a specific way of writing things, but definitely it's going to be different from the way how you write essays and so on. You have to use like business incorporated words and so on. But at least definitely I feel like writing is a very valuable skill, and not just that, like communication and so on. Just because sometimes when speaking with product managers or like your manager in general, you just want to get straight to the point. Sometimes people ramble on for like 5-10 minutes, but your question is clearly, or they beat around the bush, but then your actual question is just like a simple one-liner type of thing. So at least definitely I think English, whether it be like a major or minor, would definitely be something worth considering too.
Yes, and to give a third one that I don't have, but I see a lot in my team, an example, if you are planning to go in the AI field, artificial intelligence, anything related to ethics, responsible AI, how people think, how the human lives and whatever is super important right now. And I can't remember the specific title that my team have about this, but there are a lot of people who have a CS degree plus some philosophy, whatever. Because right now we are in an age that we need to think about this. Maybe 10 years ago, only a few people think about this. Now we are creating stuff which is super smart and affect our lives. So having that knowledge to support that is super important. But again, I think it's mostly if you're planning to go to the AI field. But I see that's a lot. I saw literally in my team, 4 people have something like this.
Okay. Any more questions from the audience? I'll go him and then you. Okay.
For example, there's a lot of competition. Companies are having finding conflict and what do you think is a way that it works in the very best? Okay, I'm gonna sort of like everybody else, or I'm a content engineer, like that's like having how do you kind of make sure while you're studying and while you're creating all of that?
I'll repeat the question so everyone can hear. His question is mostly basically just like what makes an engineer an irreplaceable engineer, and like what can you do even as a student to really stand out within your team or like even within the whole technical department or staff. But yeah, so that's to the panel.
I start.
Yeah.
So sorry for this, but nobody is irreplaceable.
That's true.
So that's the first thing that you need to know. And usually you are just a number. Even if you have an amazing team, even if you are working in something that's very profitable, if the stock says ABC and the C is not aligned with what you are doing, there are probably going to be changes on your company, on your team, on your department that may affect you. So once you realize this, you're going to start to work. But first of all, I saw a lot of people disappointed when they were moved to a different team or even worse, get fired because they were amazing engineers, amazing whatever. But first of all, when you work in a big company, it's business first. That said, communication, as Chris mentioned, that's super important, literally super important. In work, it's super important. And also sometimes experience. It's super hard for a company to onboard someone until this person start to be productive. You need to learn a lot of things. You need to understand how your team is working. You need to understand a lot of internal procedures. So to be replaceable, to be a good engineer, sometimes you need to find the best way to fit and add value. And I'm sure that there is different ways to add value at Microsoft, Google, and Amazon. Every place is different, even if you are an amazing engineer. So that's a hard question, how to be replaceable. I will say, hey, going back to a father point of view, do your best. But communication, teamwork, that's the soft skill that you really need to improve when you are there.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Bruno. Where pretty much, yeah, like I guess there's no such thing as being irreplaceable. One thing for sure is that if you're like a senior engineer, principal engineer, it is, I guess, significantly harder to kind of get laid off in a sense where you're kind of like the driving force of your organization, your team, and so on. But with that being said, I've seen principal engineers leave before, whether it be like poor performance or so on, senior engineers and so on. So pretty much, you could have like 20 plus years under your belt of work experience, but you could easily be replaced the next day because there's like tons of people. I mean, I guess there is. I suppose there's a shortage of senior engineers at the moment, and definitely a lot more new grads and so on. But at least definitely, if anything, if you ended up getting fired, for example, or laid off or whatever it happens to be, I guess take a look at it from the side of kind of why did you get fired. Sometimes it could just be business related at the end of the day, but at least sometimes there could be some type of driving factor over that. But at least I think one important thing is if stuff like that happens, it's life. Life is never perfect. You might not get into your top university of choice. You might not get the #1 internship that you really wanted. So pretty much just take that pretty much as a grain of salt. Where life is never perfect, and then just pretty much find ways to kind of carve around your path. And at the end of the day, everyone has their own path, and so on.
Oh, I didn't interpret this as layoffs, but okay. Well, I'll continue with what I had in mind, which was if you're a junior engineer, I would give 2 pieces of advice to like be irreplaceable. And one is like just question the status quo. So sometimes senior engineers have been there for so long, they're just used to doing things one way, and having new voices is what brings change. So one example is like if you're always used to having meetings in one certain way, maybe as a junior engineer, you can come on the team and be like, there's this new technique of doing meetings that I've been reading about. What if we try this? Or if maybe the code is really convoluted, you can go to a senior engineer and ask, why is the code written this way? And then they might be like, wait a second, it could be improved. And by asking these kinds of questions, that leads to number 2, which is taking initiative. I think team members that take initiative are always the most valuable in like any organization. So if you can find projects that need to be done and like offer to do those projects, like your manager will love you. And that doesn't have to just be like tech related projects. Something I've seen a lot is like a lot of teams don't have a lot of team socials. Why? Because who's going to plan the team socials? Usually it's on the manager, and the manager is really busy. So instead, team socials are a really easy thing for a junior team member to plan. So when I was in my internship, I planned like a games night and and it was pretty easy. I just brought a bunch of board games, but afterward, everyone on the team like came and thanked me because they hadn't done that in a while because they were all so busy to organize it. So taking initiative doesn't have to be really big and difficult, but it does make you more appreciated and I guess down the line more irreplaceable. I think that might not save you from layoffs, but you know, a little bit better at least. Yeah, good question.
Right. Well, I had a heart attack there. I thought it might have been broken again. Thank God. Okay, this is I think our last question. But yeah, go ahead.
I recently accepted an offer, but it's a 2-hour. Will that be really draining every day?
So this question is basically like, at what point is it smart to relocate closer to the workplace?
So I relocated. I work in Waterloo and I lived in like Mississauga before. So I did not want to do that 1.5 hour commute every single day. And in my opinion, it was very worth it. I think especially when you're a junior in your career, being close to the office means that your face is visible in the office, which means that you can like have lunch with your coworkers more. You can physically be in office and be seen working more. It means you can ask your coworkers questions in person. So in my opinion, it was very worth it. But I do know a lot of people who just didn't relocate until later on in their careers, and they have a great time. So also, I really liked working at the office. So that depends on what your office culture is like. If a lot of other people go into the office as well, yeah, it's probably worth it. But if there's a really strong hybrid or work from home, or if no one else in your team goes to the office, it might not be as worth it. What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, if anything, I definitely am an advocate for going in person. I mean, like, it's nice to be remote. At the moment, I am, just because my team's in Vancouver, so I can't really commute every day for that. But I mean, with that being said, definitely there are a lot of benefits with going in person, despite the long commute. But I think one thing to kind of ask, I guess like there are two things. One of them is, is it worth the time to commute all the time, especially with where, for example, is it worth to kind of trade off like $1,000 or $2,000 per month for rent? For you to live, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes away rather than commuting the 2 hours, because, definitely your work-life balance is important as well as sleep and so on. But then the other thing to also check is with your leadership team or your manager, if they are flexible to like whatever hours you need to work. For example, I know that my teammates, sometimes if they, or at least I know that quite a few of them live like an hour or two away as well. So for them, what they end up doing is that they work at home until like 10, 12 p.m. and then from which that's where they end up just commuting, stay in the office for a couple of hours and head back early. So at least like it definitely really depends on the company itself to see if they provide the flexibility.
Hey, commute is hard. I hate it. I used to do the hour and a half, going back and forward, 3 hours a day commuting, and that's not for me. We didn't talk about this. I didn't want to mention when we're talking about what you need to choose in your job, but we do full remote. My team is full remote. I understand that there are other teams that need to be at the office. If you're doing hard work, you need to be with your team there. If you have 90% of your team there, you need to be close. My team, I have people in the UK, France, Italy, Nigeria, Kenya, the US, Mexico, Brazil. No way that we are going to work together. There are other challenges there. I don't commute, but I get up very early in the morning before going out to run and speak with my colleagues in China, because we have a big difference with the India people there. So it's a personal decision. I will literally advise to everybody who is starting to do office life. After that, it's your choice. I have 2 kids. My kids are teenagers, so they don't want to be with me anymore, so that's fine. But if I need to spend in my personal life a couple of years ago hours doing commute, it was a mess. Lucky me, I've been working remote for the last 10 years. But again, if you're going to start, at least give it a try. To go to the office, to be with your office, I have most amazing memories there, and I learn a lot in that way of life. But if you can avoid 2 hours per day of commute, you're also going to have a better personal life there. That's not even Microsoft, that's Bruno speaking. It's my personal experience.
Okay. Yep. Thank you so much. I think that's all the time we have for everything right now. If you have further questions, I suggest writing them down because I think a handful of these speakers will be available, will be there at the networking lunch. So that's a great way to start a conversation with them too. So yeah, thank you, Bruno, Chris, and Nivi for coming. They took time out of their weekends to be here. So thank you guys so much for traveling all the way, and thank you for doing this. Yeah. Okay. There's going to be a 10-minute break, and then after that, there is going to be a resume critique blitz in at MN 2110 and career counseling in MN 1210. I think for the resume critique blitz, there's going to be industry professionals. If you have like your resume printed, stop by and they'll be able to give you tips on. I think all three of them are going to be there as well. So we'll be able to give you tips on how to improve your resume. For the career counseling thing, I think someone from the career center is coming down for that. So both of them, in my opinion, great opportunities. But in the meantime, there's a 10-minute break. So feel free to grab coffee, mingle, whatever you feel like you want to do. So thank you guys again for coming. Thank you.